to be who are right here, and you want to introduce yourselves. Just kind of give your name, your background, your classes you're taking, just what your PSEO experience is, where you are now, anything like that.
Sure. My name is Ronnie Mukherjee. I'm the current PSEOSA president, and I'll be a rising senior at Wayzata High School. I did full-time PSEO last year, and I will continue doing full-time this year.
Hi, I'm Beatrice. I am a PSU alumni from the University of Minnesota. I graduated this year from my high school, White Bear Lake. And this year I am headed to the U in the honors program to study English and creative writing and education. And then, yeah.
Hi, my name's Emmanuel. Kind of like Beatrice, I'm also an alumni. I graduated from Osseo Senior High. I'll also be going to the U of M this fall and in the honors program in CBS. So there's that background for myself.
Hi, I'm Kampal. I'll be a rising senior at Wayzata High School in the fall. And I did full time for the first semester last year and part time the second semester. And then this year I'll be doing full time for the fall semester.
Hey, my name is Abdullah Nasser. I'm also an alumni. I just graduated this year from St. Anthony Village High School. I did 2 years of PSEO, and I'll be going to the College of Liberal Arts to do human physiology this fall.
Wonderful, thank you. And so as we go today, we have some kind of general discussion topics we'll use to start off the conversation, but as attendees, there'll be, if you look in the bottom of the Zoom panel, there should be a Q&A option. You can use that to ask questions and the panelists will see it and we'll be able to try to answer them as we go as well. So just to start off, tell me a little bit about how different college classes were for you compared to high school. Like, were you overwhelmed? How tough was it? That sort of stuff.
For me, I wasn't really overwhelmed. I think I went with like pretty high expectations that, okay, you're in college now, you'll be with other college students, so be ready for a lot of work. For me, the main difference was the independence that you have. Like, you have to be really on top of all your classes, and like all your assignments when your tests are, because no one's going to like tell you, hey, you have a test next week or get these assignments in. Like, if you're not completing them, then you're just another, like, it's hard, but you're just another kid in like a class of 200, 300 other students. And this is especially for like if you're in big classes, like big lectures, so like chemistry or physics. For me, it was pretty independent like that. So yeah, the biggest difference was that you're more on your own.
For me is that it was college classes mostly differed in that they were more independent as well. So I agree with Ronnie, was that suddenly I was like, assignments were more prolonged and there was less busy work. There was definitely a lot less busy work. I was working on meaningful assignments that impacted my learning more than, a worksheet was.
Yeah, I would agree with both Beatrice and Ronnie. I think like the biggest challenge for me was just like being really organized and staying on top of all of my assignments because there was just like a lot going on and in each class and no one was like really there to like bug you to get them done. So I just had to keep track of everything and that was kind of a challenge for me at first.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of independent work. Another thing I kind of liked about it was it felt like, I don't know, it wasn't, there normally weren't assignments that were due every single day. And so that was a bit more, I don't know, it gave me flexibility in my life a bit because I could choose when to do assignments. I didn't have to, come home every day and work on a set number of assignments and then go and submit them at 8 a.m. the next day. But it gave me a bit more flexibility to be like, okay, well, this week I have this going on, so I'll just not do this assignment until a couple days later, because normally assignments have bigger due dates, I guess. like there were more weekly assignments versus daily assignments.
For me, similar to what Abdullah said, like there's a lot of flexibility with when you can submit stuff. I think one of the things that was kind of hard for me is that, especially with college and college like assignments and homework, you're expected to do it outside of class. So you basically spend no time in class doing any work. So you have to like set time where you're gonna make sure if you want to do the work that you do the work. Otherwise, there's really no class time to try to like get started on it. And like for me in high school, I was really able to like spend maybe 20 minutes after like class time was over to like finish up homework, and I was just done for the day with that class until the next day. But it's not like that in college, really.
So a lot of you mentioned how tough, how different it can be in terms of the independence and how much more flexibility you have. It sounds like that's a positive a lot of the time. Did you find it was immediately positive? Was it or was it like an adjustment period where like there were times where it was really like a kind of a struggle?
I think
And this is
like
for whoever wants to answer it. Yeah.
I think it's just like an adjustment. I know since I just did PSU last year, everything was online. So just kind of getting used to, especially being on top of everything because it's online and managing assignments. So it was a lot at once, like adjusting to college during COVID online. But yeah, after a while, you can definitely see the benefits more.
At first I definitely struggled with finding I was definitely overwhelmed by the amount of responsibility and also by time management. And I think I I struggled to get my footing on like how exams were formatted, but like once you were a couple weeks into the semester, you kind of figured out the groove of things and how to, study and how to do well in your classes. So I think really sticking with it and trying different strategies helped me even when I was not feeling great about how I was doing at first.
There was definitely like a time, like right when the fall semester started last year, where it was really hard for me to adjust to all the work that was happening or like that was given to me. But I think over time I just got used to it and my organizational skills got better. And I think like over time I just began to realize that it wasn't as bad as it felt like the first couple of weeks of the semester.
And so a question that just came in is more specifically about course difficulty compared to AP. So did any of you panelists take AP courses? And if so, what was the experience like for AP versus PSEO more specifically?
I took AP US History and AP Language and Composition in high school in like my junior or my sophomore year. One thing I really like about college versus PSEO is there's no big exam at the end. Generally, there's like a final exam, but like that exam is averaged out with everything else too. So it's not like that's not the only thing that's determining whether or not you get credit for that class. So that's really nice. Also with AP classes, it's the same thing as high school classes where you have class every single day for an hour, and you have daily assignments, and you have like it's more handheld a bit that way. Whereas in college, you'll take the same class, but you might have lecture twice a week for an hour, and you might have weekly assignments instead of daily assignments. And there's definitely a lot less, like before, a lot less busy work. Like for APUSH, there'd be like tons and tons of worksheets that you'd have to do in class. And in college, you just won't have that. You'd have maybe a lot more reading and a lot more like papers to write and stuff like that. But yeah, I personally preferred college classes more. I think AP classes are kind of a nice in between where they have more of a high school environment, but you're learning college level stuff. And then the next and final step, whatever, is learning college material, but in an actual college environment.
I agree with all of that. I kind of wanted to add that having less like busy work is kind of like a double-edged sword that I learned in a lot of the classes. Like even though you're not assigned to do it and you really don't, well, I guess you don't have to do it, but it's really helpful to like do the practice work, especially for like the math classes I've taken. Homework isn't assigned. You can do it if you want to or not, but it's really advised to do it so you can like practice the stuff. And so like for like the AP classes, they have a little bit of busy work, but I feel like it's also to like prepare yourself to like practice doing work outside of class so that like when you get to college and like you have stuff that you're able to do, but like you don't have to do, like if you know that you need practice in a certain topic, then you'll be more likely to do it.
I really want to quickly like talk about taking AP tests when you're also like taking college classes. So I took physics and chemistry through the U through at PSEO last year, and I also took the AP physics and chemistry tests. The reason why I'm still taking AP tests is like in case I go to like a private college, then it's easier. Like maybe if a college like doesn't accept PSEO transfer credit, then like just as a backup having AP credit that will most likely transfer. But for the curriculum, like I think it was really difficult because like for physics, I totally learned things differently at the U, and like there were different formulas that we use. Just because the AP class is like obviously built off of the AP test, so it was pretty difficult for me to like take the test. And then for chemistry, it was like the curriculums didn't align exactly. So I learned extra chemistry things, or I learned things in a different way through the U that I didn't learn in college. So just kind of being aware and making sure you're checking in with like teachers at the high school who are teaching those classes, because it'll definitely make it a lot easier. And I hope you guys are all doing well since scores came out today.
No, a couple of questions came in about what your own class loads were like, especially starting out. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your first semester loads were like in terms of how many credits you took, whether it was like a couple of one math or science or a couple of math or science, if those felt different, just what that experience was like.
My first semester, like I'm honestly kind of glad that PSEO like limits how many credits you can take first semester, because it is a transition that you need time to adjust to. I took 2 science courses and 1 math course my first semester. So it's just like the first couple weeks are hard while you're adjusting. And if you take too many classes first semester, I think it's hard to get used to the course load and like being more independent. Yeah, but I think it was manageable. Yeah.
For my first semester, I ended up taking Italian 1, Introduction to Economics, Taekwondo for a PE credit. Then I took a choir class, and then I also took pre-calc. So that was a fairly heavy load for a first semester, but I did manage it, and I think especially because the PE credit and the choir credit were less intensive than say pre-calc and econ and Italian.
I think I took 17 credits my first semester, but a lot of those were electives. I took 2 science classes and 1 math class, and then the rest of them were like electives. I think I took like psychology and like medical terminology. And it was a hard adjustment at first, just because there was a lot of work for a lot of the electives that I wasn't really expecting. But I think over like I said before, like it kind of evens itself out. Like the first couple weeks there was a lot to do, but then I kind of just got used to the routine. And like Ronnie said, I'm glad that like PSEO limits how many credits you can take the first semester, because there were other science classes that I wanted to take and I wasn't able to because I was already taking 2. And that helped a lot because the STEM courses are a lot of work, because there's like you have to attend discussions, labs, and lectures, and then you also do like your work outside of that. So it was just a lot in the science classes particularly.
Well, my first semester, I think I took 11 credits. I took like an intro to chemistry class at Anoka Ramsey, and then I took geography and pre-calc at the U. And like, yeah, my biggest advice is for first year or first semester, I guess, PSEO students is in your first semester, take the bare minimum. And I mean, obviously, you know, at this point, most of your classes try to use them for high school graduation, or if you have like an extra class, like 1 or 2 credits for exploring a career or something like that. But take the bare minimum. Don't take any ridiculously hard classes if you don't need to your first semester, and just get a feel for everything. And like, because I was after taking my first semester, 11 or 12 credits, whatever it was, I had a way better idea of my abilities and like whether or not I was able to do more. In the second semester, I think I jumped up to like 16 or something credits because I knew I did well enough in the first semester that if I took on another class or two, I wouldn't necessarily suffer it anyway. And I did well the second semester as well because, you know, I didn't jump up too high, but it was a reasonable number of credits for how well I did the first semester. But yeah, don't take like too many stems either in your first semester, and generally your advisors will caution you or won't let you take in the first place, just because like these grades are going to stick with you forever. And if your first semester you go in and tank your GPA, well, it's not going to be helpful either towards your high school or college transcript. So just be careful your first semester. And there's like, I also felt kind of rushed, like I have to take advantage of every single semester I have because of, you know, PSEO's free money basically. But that free money isn't worth anything if you tank your classes. So yeah, just be a bit careful your first semester, and then you can pick it up as much as you can, or as much as you need to your second semester.
Now, one question that kind of jumps off of what you were saying, Abdullah, is someone asks, wants to know a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry, Emmanuel, go ahead. I apologize.
Oh, no worries. I guess what I was gonna say is that like I took like 16, 17 credits my first and second semesters. And so like 2 things I would like if I were to tell myself like back then is to like really pay attention to the syllabus, because like in high school you can kind of just throw away the syllabus because the teachers like tell you all the due dates when the tests are coming up and that and whatever. In college, the professors like they're not obligated to do that. They don't often do that. You know, they have lectures that they need to teach, so they're always like on the move and stuff. One other thing too is to like think about your study space where you're going to be like able to like do your work. Like if it's on campus, I wish I probably would have like stayed more in the libraries to have like more of a space to like study and read and stuff. Like if you have classes online and you're going to be like at home a lot, if you have like a kind of noisy house, or if you have like lots of stuff to do, maybe going to a library if you're able to. But if you're also not able to, maybe like try to take classes where it won't take as much time out of your day, that type of thing.
Now, a couple of you mentioned some of the ways that you went about picking your classes, like for, you know, towards potential majors or towards, I know Abdullah, you mentioned like high school requirements. So one student asked, one attendee here asked, how did you go about building your schedules before your very first semester? I feel a little overwhelmed with all the different options, so I'm wondering how you planned your courses and narrowed down your options. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what kind of priorities you had when you picked your courses, any tips or, you know, key sites or tools that you for planning that you wished you'd used earlier, anything like that that helped you decide going into your first semester what to take.
I kind of based off my schedule first by looking at like my 4-year plan for high school. Like, I don't know if other schools do this, but I had like a 4-year plan for classes that I wanted to take at my high school. So just seeing, okay, I know I wanted to take physics sometimes, I wanted to take chemistry sometimes, but also taking advantage of PSEO because you can take classes that are like more advanced or at higher levels. I know that I was thinking about going into medicine or business, and I couldn't decide which one I wanted to do. So just knowing like if I go into medicine, like having my chemistry sequence done. So I've taken general chemistry, I've taken both of them last year, and then this year I'm going to be taking organic chemistry. So I'm set up for my chemistry if I do decide to go into the medical school for go to medicine in college, but also being able to take other business classes because I took the ones in my high school. So just more specific towards like marketing or finance or accounting. So just um, so first I started off with like my high school and then my high school schedule that I planned out, and then looking at classes like that, and then how can I take higher level classes. One resource that I like to use is Gopher Grades. You can just enter in a professor or a class, and it'll tell you like which professor like has the easiest grading. So I planned out my schedule. This was obviously like the last thing that I did, but if I had an option to choose a professor that typically grades easier, then I went for them. So that's up to you though. It's a good resource.
I, as far as choosing classes, I mostly just looked at my high school requirements. And also, I mean, the U of M has, I'm not sure if this is mentioned or not, but the U of M has common education requirements, liberal education requirements, I think that's what it's called, that every student has to take, regardless of your major or regardless of what you're doing, if you're going to go to the U. And so for me, I knew I was going to go to the U, and I was pretty set on going here anyways. So I figured I'd try to take classes that overlapped with my high school requirements and the university's liberal education requirements. And so that's where like geography was one of those classes that I needed for high school, but it also fulfilled some requirements for the U. Chemistry fulfilled some requirements for the U and also for high school, and so did pre-calc. That also fulfilled some requirements. And those are all just kind of basic classes, especially like intro chemistry and pre-calc that like I was thinking about doing medicine, so I would have needed it there. But really, there are so many other fields that those two classes would be needed for, chemistry and pre-calc. So it was like that first semester, it's like, it didn't really matter what specific classes I took that much because there's so many of these like intro level classes that you'll need for so many majors that like you take them, you get credit for them, and they fulfill requirements for high school and for the college, but it's not limiting you really. Like you're not really wasting any credits. Like right now I'm at a point where I know what major I'm doing and I know what classes I need to take. And it's different if I were to take a class like in history that I don't need and that I wasn't interested in at all, because that would be wasting my credits versus me taking a class in biochemistry or something, which would be useful. So in the first semester, it didn't really matter because those classes are all so intro level that they could be applied anywhere. So I figured those would be the best classes to take for then.
Similar to what like Abdullah said, you know, figuring out classes that are more useful to what you're planning to do if you have that idea already. For me, I'm kind of like the same way. I already have an idea of what I want to do. And so like the way I did it, I'm not sure if I mean, the way that I did, the U of M has a whole like list of degrees, and you can see like the classes that are required to take that. So, for example, if I wanted to do like biology, I could just search that up and see like all the classes that would be required. And like he said, a lot of them are intro classes. So like in CBS, there's a lot of intro classes that you have to take first. So if you take all of them, you can still switch to any other degree in the College of Biological Sciences because they're all intro classes. So like if you have an idea of what you want to do, intro classes are like a good start because depending on the college, of course, you can kind of just take those and still be fine for switching to whatever you want to do.
There was a question that came in that is very subjective, and I want to give you all a chance to plug your favorites. So the question is, what classes have been your favorites? Now, keep in mind to any attendees that, again, very subjective. So one student might say that calculus gave them a meaning in life, and another person might say they'd rather chew on glass than take calculus. So yeah, so with that in mind, what were some of your personal favorite classes?
I had like two favorites. So if I was like giving a more, I don't know, like whether I liked the material, then probably general chemistry. I thought that was fun, kind of fun. I especially like the labs because they like shipped us. No, they didn't ship us. We had to go pick them up, but like entire lab kits. So we like had graduated cylinders and chemicals and stuff at home. So I kind of liked that. I got banished to my laundry room to do all of it, but it was so fun. And then like I also liked medical terminology just because it was an easy class. I don't know if that's an academic answer, but it was totally self-paced. If you want to take like a class to boost your GPA, highly recommend medical terminology.
This one is definitely subjective. My favorite class that I think I took at the U was definitely my Italian film class, which talked about culture and film in Italy. It was super fun. It was super easy. You literally just had to do, for me at least, you just had to do a discussion every week, and then you got to like write about the films in your exam, and it was really fun. And I also really liked my choir class because I got a lot of fun community from that.
This is really subjective too, but mine was Intro to Sociology. It was a lot of work. There was a lot of reading and a lot of papers to write, but I just really enjoyed the content and the teacher was amazing. She was she was like one of the nicest professors I've ever had, and it was just an amazing class. It was structured really well, and there was like the discussions were really fulfilling, and I just enjoyed the content a lot.
Oddly enough, for me, it was organic chemistry 1 and organic chemistry 2, which most people would probably disagree with. But I took mine at Anoka Ramsey, not here, and I'm not like super sure how the classes here work. But what I liked about them was that we had like groups set up. Like I think we had like 4 people in my group or 5 people in my group, pretty much for both semesters because we all like were randomly put in a group in the first semester, and second semester we wanted to stick together again, and like we grew really close, and we were like the thing I like about college is like anyone who takes a class, even at the U, I've noticed pretty much anywhere, when people take a class, they're generally serious about wanting to pass versus in high school. Sometimes, I don't know, depends on your high school, I guess, but sometimes people weren't always super committed to doing well. Versus in college, everyone's trying to get the best score that they can in the class. And so when you have that kind of environment in the class, things become a lot more fun, even if the content isn't necessarily entertaining by any means. But yeah, I guess I really like classes with group work in them. So anytime I've had group work in my classes, I've tended to enjoy them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like for me, some of the favorite classes I've taken were my science classes. Not really for the exams. Those were kind of hard, but like for the like group aspect of it, like Abdullah was talking about, like in my biology classes, the ones I've taken, we've always been placed into groups. So we always like would like work on the project, but then we would also talk about like other stuff, like other classes we were taking, how we were doing in the class, and life, those type of things. And like for my physics and my chemistry classes, those classes were pretty fun in that they always showed us experiments. In my physics class, they always showed like oscillating things, waves. In my chemistry class, they like showed us the power of like oxygen and hydrogen and like in a balloon and popping in the explosion. That was pretty fun.
Now, a couple of you mentioned the community and mentioned like it was the choir class that helped for community, like working with lab partners. So talk a little bit more about that in terms of what it tends to be like socially in terms of meeting peers in classes, getting study buddies, and the like. We had a great question about that. So what it's like, yeah, just meeting, what it's like being among other students.
I think the alumni can probably talk about this more because they had class in person and I didn't. But for people that are taking online classes, there was always a group me for every single class. So try and get into or like find the link to the group me. But honestly, I found it actually pretty hard to find study groups. A lot of people are like, so like, don't be afraid to initiate the conversation. Hey, does anybody want to be part of a study group? Because chances are other people are kind of shy or like don't want to be the one to do it. So if no one is asking for study groups, you can be the first one to do it. Don't be afraid. People always want to join a study group.
I would say it kind of depends on the class. And I think definitely like the larger classes are a little bit less social or because you're such a vast group and everyone tends to kind of sit in different places every day. So, I mean, like first day I would grab a study group or whatever, even, or like the first few weeks and I would just, meet the people around you. And then but you'll probably be talking less in that one. And then like in smaller classes, professors really like to open up discussions, I think, more. I was in an Italian class and we had like 12 kids there, and I became really close friends with a lot of the people in my class. So I think it would be it's kind of like that. And a lot of students, they don't know that you are a PCO student, and and even when they find out, they either don't care or they're like, wow, you're really smart. And then you're like, nah, I'm just, hardworking and I'm here. So yeah, they're everyone is pretty much really nice. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I
I've
don't
only
think
taken. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I've only taken classes online so far, so my experience is a lot like Ronnie's. In STEM classes, there's usually like a lab group or like a discussion group, which is like a great way to meet people or like to make a study group because you'll be like assigned to them for most of the semester. And I guess that's just like the best way to meet people that you can study with. But otherwise, like in online classes, it's kind of hard to find people that you can study with.
I was gonna kind of repeat what Beatrice said, is that no one really, like, there's no way for them to even know that you're PSEO. So I know a friend of mine was saying like before, it used to be kind of like he wouldn't want to ever say he was PSEO because his schedule would treat him differently or treat him like a kid or something like that. So he would always just say, yeah, I'm in college, whatever, I'm taking these classes too, and act like he was act like he's not, like it's his first semester there. But people really don't care because like as long as you, especially if you're like in a group, as long as you're doing your part, like no one really cares what grade you're in or whatever. And people, like we just said, tend to just be impressed that you're in high school, but you're already taking the same classes as them. Especially if you're like, advanced classes, like, you're a junior in high school or a senior in high school, but you're taking organic chemistry, and they're like, wow. But yeah, do not be afraid to talk to people or make study groups and stuff like that, because people really don't care. And I mean, even normally in classes, there are a lot of classes where you'll have a college freshmen and college seniors, like people from all sorts of different grades sitting in one classroom. So already they don't care what year you are necessarily.
Yeah, my experience has pretty much been the same as everyone said. You don't really have to mention it even, because like everyone has said, as long as you're like doing the work, then it doesn't really matter. But even if you do like want to tell them, they'll be really impressed, or they'll be like, that's cool. It won't really bother them, or they'll just be impressed by it. Even like the professors and stuff, they'll be probably impressed by it. And, not much will change. You can approach people to try to be in groups, especially lab groups if you're assigned to that. You can study with your lab partners and things like that.
Now, kind of jumping over to a more technical question. This is one that the alumni who've been on campus more may have more experience with, but the question is, would you guys recommend a laptop or tablet? And so I'm also interested in hearing, for those of you who've been on campus, like what your experience was like, if you didn't use that, like what, using computer labs or anything like that.
This has been, yeah, this is something that I struggled with deciding too. Like I remember spending hours just going through pros and cons and trying to figure out what to do. And for me personally, I eventually settled on a laptop and an iPad, and like obviously buying both of those at one time was not in my budget as a student, but I already had an iPad from way before, so it worked out for me to buy a laptop and have that combo. But that for me, I like that combo personally because I can take notes on my iPad, like handwritten notes, and have enough space to write on it, to write proper notes, while also having like a laptop that I can refer to for like if I need to look at my textbook, or if I'm looking at an assignment on my laptop and doing the assignment in my iPad and my notes or something like that. So that was really nice because there's a lot of screen space there versus having like a tablet. You can really do one or the other. Sure, you can do like split screen with your tablet and have your your textbook open on one half and your notes on the other half, but you're left with a much smaller space to write notes. So I like having two screens personally, but it also depends on what you're going to be doing for the most part in college. Obviously, everyone has some level of the same classes in their more intro classes, but if you're someone doing like computer science, I know a friend of mine bought an iPad, and he's just stopped using it after a while because as a computer science student, there's not really much, at least for him, there wasn't much handwritten stuff going on versus like, for example, in chemistry, you're doing a lot of drawings and stuff like that, or like if you're taking a lot of math classes, you're doing a lot of math homework, which definitely requires a lot of writing. But like, it also depends on what you're doing in college, or what most of your classes are going to be like. But I think it's such a hard question to answer because there's so many scenarios, and like there could be one semester where one setup works and the next semester you end up not using one thing or the other. So I guess I'll just say that I use an iPad and a laptop and that works for me. And that's like for more bio classes and chemistry classes and stuff like that. So that's just, I guess if you're in my boat, that might be a good option for you. I'll say that much.
I think for me, I already had a laptop, so a lot of the work was pretty, especially like if you're writing essays or like papers, it's really not convenient to use an iPad to try to type stuff out. It's really better to just have a laptop to type essays and papers and stuff like that. Especially for some of the biology classes, there was a little bit of coding that I had to do. So I'm not sure I was able to, if I could have done that with an iPad or like a different tablet. Though I would consider getting a tablet or an iPad. No, I wouldn't spend a lot of money on it, but like something basic where I'll be able to like do drawings and stuff. I mean, I just use paper and pencil. It's been working for me for a while, but I feel like it would also be pretty convenient to have an iPad so I don't have to like always buy a whole new notebook and like pencils each semester after I fill out the old notebook I had. But primarily I just use a laptop, and it's been working for me pretty well, especially since the one I have, it's has a touch screen. So like if I want to draw on it, I can do that a little bit, but I primarily use it as a laptop.
Yeah, I will say I definitely agree with Emmanuel. There's a lot of stuff that you can't do on an iPad, or actually, I guess you can do those stuff, but it's a lot more convenient to do them on a laptop. So yeah, I think having a laptop is you should go for that first if you don't have one already. And like they don't have to be ridiculously expensive or anything, just something that works decently. But I think a laptop is pretty important. You will struggle without a laptop, I think.
This is a question for kind of both current and former students. What kind of tools help you? Because a lot of you've talked about in your answers about how independent the classes can be and how they don't kind of force you to do certain work. And you mentioned how there was like the syllabus you get at the start, like really just tells you what the course will be like throughout the semester. So what tools did you use to help stay organized? Were there particular apps that you use to help keep track of things? A physical book, Google Calendar or something? What was your organization style?
I am definitely a fan of paper planners. When I first got into high school, I started using my planner a lot, just to keep track of important deadlines or big papers, all the tests that I have. But for more day-to-day activities, especially because we were online, I was not focused at all, just going on my phone, laying on bed, just not doing work. So I was looking for things to help. So I know that there's the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if people have probably heard of it, but it's either 5 minutes, 25 minutes studying, 5 minutes break, and you do that a couple times, and then you have a longer break. So there's this app called Focus To Do, and it kind of combines it. I tried a couple apps, but I liked this one because it also helps you plan out how many cycles it'll take for you to do every assignment. So I planned out my days using the app. So kind of oh, you need to get these 3 assignments and work on your paper for this long. So that told me how much work I had to do, helped me plan my sleep. I could plan it around classes a lot easier. So yeah, that's what I did.
I used a paper planner, and that kind of would detail. I would even put in time for self-care and meal times and everything. And then I also used an app called Notion that Abdullah got me hooked on, actually. And that is an all-in-one. So you can plan pretty much anything. It can be a notebook, it can be a schedule, or it can have all your assignments. It's great. And that's what I loved using.
I mostly just use Google Calendar. I just put everything, I made a separate calendar for each class. And then when we got the syllabus at the beginning of the semester, I put in all of the assignment due dates for the whole semester into my Google Calendar. And then that way, and then at the beginning of every week, I would schedule out the week. And I'd Beatrice, I would have time for self-care and meals. And it was just all planned out. And then the thing with Google Calendar is that I would just download it onto my phone's calendar, and then everything was just in one place, and I really liked that.
I also use Notion. And for me, I mostly used it for taking notes for classes. Andrew, can I screen share for a minute?
Oh, yep. Yes, should just take a second. Okay, you should be able to now.
All right, sweet. I'll just show a random thing that I did last semester for my cell biology class. The way I like writing notes is I would just and this is just a random chapter that I have. So I have a page for cell biology, and then at the top I just uploaded the syllabus or the schedule for the class anytime I needed a quick reference. And then here I just have the class was split up into 3 sections, and each section had a bunch of different chapters. So any random chapter that I click on, I have different sections within a chapter. And what I did was I just wrote myself questions. So this, if the first, I just kind of went through the entire chapter and wrote different questions about different subjects or whatever it was, and then answer the question in these little toggle switches. And then right before an exam, if I ever needed to cram, or generally just for good study, I would go through all of these questions and just ask myself one by one, well, what is the main function of the plasma membrane? And then I would kind of out loud say what I think it was, and then open it and be like, okay, well, I got this right. And then color something red if I didn't know what it was, stuff like that. And for me, that really worked. And I did really well in exams when I did this to study. So I guess that's just one way you could use Notion. And then I also use a to-do list to keep track of all of my homeworks, because without that, I definitely would have missed a lot of stuff.
And just a quick question about Notion, as you and Beatrice were talking about it. Is it is it purely free, or is it free but to get the good stuff, you have to like pay a sub, or what's the is it or what's the cost?
It's free. I think there is a premium version, but like I don't need it. Like you have pretty much everything that like you would need, I think, for free.
It's free if you're a student. So you have to use your UMN email to sign up for it. But the pro version is like for people who have like a lot of even companies use this for their employees and stuff. And it costs money if you want like a ton of collaborators and you want a bunch of advanced stuff that I would never even touch as a student. But yeah, use your student address and it's free. Actually, a good tip in general for a lot of stuff, there are a lot of good discounts out there for applications and stuff like that. If you're a student and you use your student address, like even Amazon Prime had like 6 months free, and like right now I'm paying half price for
Spotify
Amazon
Premium
Prime.
is super cheap.
Yeah, Apple Music
yeah.
has a discount too. There's a ton of stuff you can do with your student ID. So abuse it as much as possible, I would say.
Yeah, like I mean, like you can use the library services for free. Like if you're doing research projects, a lot of the websites you can access the papers with your UMN ID and stuff like that. There's a lot you can do, kind of just adding to what they said. But for what I did for organizing, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, I really stick to the syllabus. I never really had a planner. I never really grew into using it, but especially with everything being online, I eventually just went and got myself like one of those like whiteboard month planner things. So I can just like write in like whatever is happening in the month, like assignments, exams, and like events and different things like that to keep myself on track. It was pretty helpful, especially at the ending of the semester, because I could just look at it and see what's happening and when it's happening and that type of thing. So yeah, that's what I've been using.
Beatrice, so
kind
you're
of-
sharing your Notion setup?
Yep. So here's where I like have my University of Minnesota planner. So that's like where I have like all the stuff from my financial aid this year. Here's where my schedule goes. So it's where I kind of keep everything together. So this is where my classes are. So it'll show me that. Here would be like my 4-year plan for like what classes I'm gonna take, how I'm gonna graduate and schedule and stuff. So it has like all of my courses that I plan on taking, or like the outlines. It has all my have all of my requirements that I need, and then I have all of the classes that I still need to take, and then like plans for what I want to do, and then like all the stuff I need to pack for when I am going, or like this is where you would put like stuff like what you want to buy for school supplies. And then here was like all of my for when I was in PSEO, there was all of my graduation requirements and all the classes I had taken. And here's where I track all the assignments I have. So these are for all the classes that I will be taking. And then I would typically have an essay outline for when I'm writing essays. And various and then I would also keep a reading list for anything I was like wanting to read for class. So yeah, that was kind of it. And then also I would typically include a I'm trying to think of what I normally do. Would also be to include I don't know, doesn't matter. But yeah, so that's kind of a way that you can use it to like literally manage like, kind of all of your life in one place. It's also, I share a page with my roommate where we decide like what we're bringing to college and like all of our info and all of our schedules and stuff. So that's a good thing for like when you are going to have to be sharing a space.
There were a couple of questions I want to bundle together to ask y'all. Were there any campus resources that you found to be helpful in studying for your classes? And also, if you can talk about what your instructors were like as a resource. Like, was it easy to talk to them, easy to get help from them? Were they approachable or cold or nasty or super friendly? Or, so what kind of resources on campus did you use and what were your instructors like? Or, and I guess not necessarily on campus, but like what kind of campus, especially for those of you who are who only have been in PSEO last year, like what kind of campus resources do you use even if they were online?
I don't think I use that many online resources. Um, I think I can talk about the instructors more. Um, Honestly, I was so scared of, so like for big classes, I had, sorry, let me start over. So for my most of my classes, I had like big lectures, so it was like 200 students in a lecture, and I was so scared of all of the instructors. Like first semester physics, I never even talked to my instructor. I mostly went through my TA. My TA was absolutely amazing. I know that the physics and chemistry, I think, but physics was better organized, but it had like drop in like TA hours where you could like drop in and ask them any questions. So helpful. I was there like almost every day because I am not a fan of physics. But yeah, I still never ended up talking to my professor, which I'm really sad about because he was a really funny guy. And then chemistry, I did talk to her. I had the same professor for second semester, and I did talk to her, and she was so nice. I kind of wish I talked to her earlier, just at office hours. And then for more like classes that are smaller size, like my English class, my professor was just really nice. And I was trying to think about if I had any bad interactions with professors, and I can't say that I did. They were all super nice. They varied in like how strict they were, but all of them were super great.
On the instructor note, I think the bigger classes are it's harder to connect with your instructor, and they tend to want to defer to the TA for helping students. But I think smaller classes, they typically will love interacting with you. I remember for my English class, I used to just go to office hours literally to hang out with my professor, because she was like, no one comes, and whenever I had a question, I would literally go, and then we would spend like another hour just talking about like mundane stuff going on in our life. I was close with my Italian professor. Um, she even came to see me in a play, because I talked to her about it once. And so I think instructors they really want you to succeed. And if you show that you care, then they are more inclined to be nice, and I think more inclined to share their expertise with you. If you aren't just trying, like if you don't show up and you're like, how do I do this? You're like, hey, and you're like, I just want the answer to this one thing. It's more if you're like, hey, I need some help with this, and I would love to get your advice on it.
I definitely agree. I think that having a good relationship with your instructor is like really important. For physics, my first semester, the instructor, I don't think he was used to teaching a huge class online. And so a lot of the class structure wasn't very organized, and a lot of students didn't like that. But I would regularly go to his office hours and ask questions and email him. And that made the class so much easier for me just because he was a lot more helpful one on one than he was kind of in that big group setting. And I think that was mostly because the class was online. Other than that, the chemistry department, so the way the Gen Chem works is that like there's a lab section that's completely different than like the actual like course. And so I had a TA for the lab, and he was really helpful, but I would only kind of ask him about like lab related stuff. And then my professor, like for the actual lecture section, was amazing, and I would email her like all the time, and she was so helpful. And so I agree with what Beatrice said, where reaching out to your professor or instructor is really important because you get a lot more out of the class if you do that.
I think for me, my experience is shared just like everyone else, especially with the professors. I remember my first semester when I took chemistry, I was really I did pretty good, but I wanted to go to my professor for like help on some stuff, especially before the final exam. I was kind of scared that would seem like dumb in front of my professor by like going and asking these like dumb questions. I felt like, but even with that out of the way, I went, I saw her, and like she explained these items to me, the questions she explained it, and I came out better because I now understood what was going on with all of that. And so like the semesters after that, I like, especially with my math class, like maybe every week I would like visit my math professor on like equations, seeing like how I would go through a problem, seeing like what he was thinking and things like that. And so especially I think, especially going to the U of M now, I'll because the office hours are there. Not many people do go to them because people sometimes think that like they know everything. You don't. I don't know everything. So like, especially going to U of M, I plan on taking advantage of those office hours because you can just ask these questions and see where the professor's head is at, and they'll get to know you more also. So if you do go frequently, they'll get to know you. And like if you want to go to like professional schools also, that's pretty useful to have a connection to like a university faculty and like professors. They can help you. They're there for that. They're not gonna like tell you that you're dumb. They're gonna help you. So
Now, there were a couple of other questions that came in, but it's about the end of our time here, about 2 o'clock. So I do want to wrap up. I want to be respectful of both the panelists' time and your time as attendees. Now, I'm able to stay a bit longer if I know there are a number of panelists who have to go at 2 o'clock. If anyone wants to stay, we can see if we can kind of go into a bit of overtime to answer the remaining questions. But beyond that, that's going to be it for kind of the main session here. I just want to thank the panelists for giving their time, for volunteering their time, and for you as attendees for letting us into your home or wherever you are electronically today. And yeah, well, that's about it. It's about it. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
And so are any panelists able to stay? Again, no obligation here at all. Like if any panelists are able to stay, there's a couple of lingering questions we can handle.
I
The
can stay a bit longer.
okay.
Okay.
So I guess for anyone who can stay, the first question here is what's your opinion on online class versus an in-person class? Is one better than the other?
I think for me, I did like in-person classes more because that was when I was able to go on campus. And so a lot of the things that I think helped me was that I was able to like go to the library after class. I was able to like explore the campus after class. I was able to like grab something to eat after class, maybe see some of my friends that might also be POCO students or like college students that I know after class and things like that. I think that was taking in-person classes is really nice for that. Also, one of the questions that I answered, it was like, how do you like go to campus? The University of Minnesota, they have like a U-Pass. It's unlimited. It's $114 a semester, so you can take as many bus rides as you want to from campus. Even it doesn't even have to be to campus. It can be any bus ride anywhere, unlimited. During the semester. So I use that a lot. It helped. So I didn't have to like pay for parking and gas and all of that. I would just like, it was a little bit of a longer commute, maybe like 30, 40 minutes, but I mean, it's not that bad if you're able to plan for it. And also, like I said, the other benefits of being able to go to campus was pretty nice. But with online classes, if you have like a place that you're able to study, it's pretty useful because it's pretty flexible. You're at home or like you're in the library. You can study right after the Zoom meeting is over, wherever you're meeting, and then just do whatever after that. A lot of the online classes, you don't have to like there's not really many due dates. It's kind of that you just have to get it done in a certain order before you're able to move on to the next thing. But yeah, that's my opinion of like in-person classes and like online classes.
I definitely don't think one is better than the other. Like there's no objective way of comparing the classes, but it depends on the person. Really, for me, like after having done online classes, I think I definitely prefer doing in person. Again, for me, there's the aspect of just being in a lecture. In Zoom classes, it's kind of hard to like ask questions in the middle of lecture and stuff like that. And generally now professors are tending to just post video recordings of lectures instead of doing lectures, at least in my experience. So I really enjoyed the aspect of being in class, sitting as close to the front row as possible, asking as many questions as possible, and also hearing other students ask questions and listening to the responses for those. Being able to, go to office hours in the physical place and talk to the professor when there aren't other students in the room all the time. And yeah, for me, I just preferred that to online. But that's not to say that online doesn't have its own benefits. You can do assignments whenever you want to. If you want to, you can work a lot more hours, I guess, because you can work in the daytime and do your homework and stuff in the evening. So there's definitely a lot of benefits to it. Really, the only way that you'll realize which one you like more is if you take one of each class and get the experience of both. Other than that, like if you're a first year PSEO student doing college for the first time, I wouldn't stress about it. I just whatever class is available to you, just go for it. One way or another, one way or the other, you'll adapt to it. And semester after that, you'll know what kind of classes you like, which kinds you don't. So don't stress too much about it.
One more question that came in is, are there any reading strategies you might recommend? This question says, I took 2 AP classes last year, did okay, but not great with my reading. So do you have any tips?
Honestly, there's not really, for me at least, there wasn't really anything I could do about like not getting around reading. One of my classes, it was like one of them was like Age of Globalization. One of them was like an American history class. Both of them I took at the U of M. There was a lot of reading. I couldn't really get out of it. The thing that just motivated me was just to know that if I didn't read, I wouldn't do well in the class. I really didn't have any. There wasn't really any shortcuts that I knew of how to like get like faster a bit at reading. I think that you just are able to go through the material. You just have to just go through it. I feel like. I mean, if you're a fast reader, of course, that makes it way easier because you're able to go through it faster. If you're a slow reader, I would probably recommend like finding a really really good place where you're able to like focus. Because especially in college, there's a lot of reading. Even like in math and like physics and chemistry classes, even though you don't really need a textbook for those classes, but that's like where example problems are found. So maybe for those sorts of courses, you don't need to read as much, but like for like an English course and a history course, those like writing courses and things like that, you will have to read a lot and you'll just have to go through it, I think.
And
found
before you
annotating-
before you answer, Abdullah, there's just one thing I want to butt in here with. There's a resource I'm going to put in chat called the U of M Student Academic Success Services, which is like a counseling study skills type service. They have a link here. If you go to the study skills link where I am, it's like a number of strategy guides that they came up with through research and experience about how to improve your college reading specifically. So yeah, I'll include this. I'll add this to the chat. Sorry, go ahead, Abdullah.
For me, I found annotating and summarizing helpful. So as you're reading a paper or through a book, annotating that book, especially like I normally like using PDF versions instead. So, on my iPad or on my laptop, annotating the book and highlighting things that are important. Also, I remember I had an English class where we had to read a bunch of novels. And for me, what was helpful was like, every once in a while in the novel when some important event happened, just or any observations that I have of certain characters or whatever, I would like in a normal notes app, I would just literally bullet point a bunch of notes about the book. Like this happened and this is an important takeaway, or this character did this, or an observation about this character is that they're very stingy, or whatever it might be. Also, I think another thing that kind of helped me was looking online for book summaries. Because oftentimes you read an entire book and you can't feasibly retain every bit of information. So sometimes places like SparkNotes or things like that are book summaries that you can, just go through the entire book with chapter by chapter and take notes off of the book summary. So you're not I guess it's a better way to summarize the book that you just finished reading. Instead of going back and reading another 300 pages, you read another 10 pages that summarizes the entire book. And generally, professors tend. I had one professor that was a bit picky about, like, he would ask uh, sometimes unreasonably specific questions, but generally they don't ask questions in that much detail, and it's more, you know, bigger parts of the plot or things that bigger events that happened. So having a summary of a book that you can refer to and try to memorize somewhat was helpful for me.
And so one last question before we all wrap up here. It's a two-part question. How are you able to pick up books and do you really use them? The first part I'll actually say don't worry about answering, because as far as how to pick up books, it's definitely changed since the last year. And so keep an eye on your email in the next, I think we're going to send an email out in around the week of, probably the end of the week of August 9th, with full details on how to pick up books. But Emmanuel and Abdullah, do you want to comment on if the class materials that were required were actually required, or did it depend on the class, or did you use those books?
Similar to what I said a bit earlier, like for some of the chemistry, math, like the physics classes, you probably won't necessarily need the textbooks, especially if you're following the lectures like thoroughly and taking notes of them pretty thoroughly, because what the professor is teaching is coming from from
Yeah, I'll carry off the question from there. Um, I prefer not using my textbook whenever I can get out of it, because I'm not the biggest fan of reading that much, or reading nonfiction textbooks at least. So yeah, like Emmanuel was saying, generally professors will lecture straight from a textbook, and some professors will expect you to know. Like in my cell biology class, for example, I had a professor who would lecture straight from the textbook, but he made it clear in his syllabus and in his quizzes and stuff that he wanted us to know what was in the textbook as well as his lecture. So he would kind of summarize the textbook, but he wanted us to be able to go deeper than that a bit. So we would have to also read the textbook and take notes on that, and complement the textbook with his lectures. So you'll have those kind of professors. But you'll also have professors for who the textbook is mostly just like a reference point that you don't really ever need. If you're taking good notes on lecture and stuff, you might open the textbook one time at the beginning when you're all motivated, and then 3 months down before finals, you're like, I've done well enough without my textbook. I don't really need to open it. It just depends on your class. I would definitely start off using it as much as possible and taking notes on it as much as possible. So you're not starting off in a bad place, but within a week or two of the class and after your first quiz or exam, you'll quickly find out just how much you need to use a textbook and whether you can make it through the class without one.
This is especially the case as a PSEO student, since you'll get your required textbooks for free, your required course materials for free. As a non-PSEO student, it's probably more of a choice. Your recommended books, I think, and you can comment if your experience is different, Abdullah and Emmanuel, but I think for most people find that the recommended or optional books are also totally optional. Like they really are. They really are optional. Like you don't have to purchase those.
Oh yeah, 100%. I've taken summer classes and I have purchased, but in the normal school year where PSEO is covered, I don't think I've ever actually put any money to buy a book, and I've done just fine. And I think once that was the case for one of my classes, I'm not sure which class it was or where it was, but one of the optional books was somewhat required in the class, and it seemed like it was pretty important, one of the optional resources. And so I talked with the professor and I was like, can you make it a required? I think it might have just been a mistake, or maybe they did change it, but they then made it a required. So, I could have access to it, but not be expected to pay money for it. So yeah, never pay for any books or anything unless it's something that it's hard to say. I guess it depends on who you are, but if it's a type of optional material that would really help you, for example, you're taking organic chemistry and You know, there's at the bookstore they're selling like a kit, like a molecular, I forget what it's called, where they have like those little, you know, models with like balls and sticks that you can make models of different molecules, and that would really help you. If you're like a visual learner, then it might be worth it. But for the most part, no, I would not recommend using spending any of your own money to buy books or resources.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it's been for me. I've never spent money. The only time I did spend money while in PSEO was to buy a calculator, and that was because technically you can't return a calculator after using it. So I still have that calculator, but that was because I paid for it and stuff. But like the textbooks, after using them, you return them. And so like I never got the optional stuff either because I really didn't need it. Like especially after, like Abdullah said, if after the first like week, 2 weeks, and even after the first couple quizzes and exams, you'll figure out if you need the book or not, and you typically don't. So
And so that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you again for staying extra, for both the panelists and the attendees. This was the first of two student Q&A, panel Q&As that we're going to do. Today was focused on academics. We're also going to have one on Monday, August 2nd from 4 to 5 p.m. focused on student life and travel experiences. And so we, again, totally optional, just like this time. We'll hope to see you there. So thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.